Hello everyone and welcome to Saturday Studies with Letitia and Aniqah. Welcome back, I should say. This is episode 2 of an ongoing series where we try to analyze poetry to appreciate the significance, intricacies, and beauty of the form of expression. This is done through analyzing poetry, its meaning, language, and diction. And you can check the schedule at the end of the video so that you can try and analyze a poem before I do to see how much you get right, or if you notice things that I didn't. As always, the first thing we'll be doing is doing a full reading of the poem, and this week we've decided to do the poem Tell All the Truth, which is actually my favorite poem from the book that I wrote, but Are You Really Sorry? So let's get into it. Tell all the truth. The truth is an ocean, vast, explorable, deep, constantly shifting in motion, that you can never see its entirety. Your view of a capricious sea to deem as truth is a fickle snapshot, inconsistent by the eye's potency, fraught with the prejudice of blind spots. To show a Polaroid of the scene, a moment stolen from infinite perceptions, sans an annotation of pertinency are but receipts without actual connection. Yet, to reveal the relevant journal entry, by detailing the events in its entirety, wading the current of doubts and defense, could weave the muddled waters, perplexity for clarity. Like last week, now that we've done the full reading, now we'll be doing a rereading and analyzing by stanza. So let's get into it. So last week the poem Closure didn't have too many literary devices because I had said this poem was meant to be very concise and very straight to the point. This poem, as we can tell, is a little bit more flowery or beachy, as I should say. So a motif is a literary device. It's a technique that consists of a repeated element that has symbolic significance to literary work. And here we see two motifs in work. One is a nautical theme, the idea of the ocean, water, current, sea, motions, depth is brought up a lot, but also the idea of photography, documenting, and sight. For instance, snapshot, view, Polaroid, journal entry, blind spot, eyes potency, and perception. And as we go through the poem, we'll see a little bit about why that was important. So straight off the bat, we can see Tell All the Truth is the name of the poem. But strangely enough, it has nothing to do with supposedly nothing to do with the idea of the oceans and with the ocean and photography. So why is that important? Well, if you're paying attention in lit class, Tell All the Truth is actually a literary reference. It refers to Emily Dickinson, a famous poet, and one of her poems. The entire quote is, "Tell all the truth, but tell it slant." And I have the poem here for us to analyze together. So tell all the truth, but tell it slant. Success in secret lies, too bright for our infirm delight, the truth's superb surprise. As lightning to the children eased, with explanation kind, the truth must dazzle gradually, or every man be blind. A lot to take in here. I know we're doing a poem analysis within a poem analysis, but the literary context of this is important because we want to know why the poet would have chosen Tell All the Truth to be the meaning here. So tell all the truth, but tell it slant. What does that mean? If we think of slant, we think of like slanted or like cursive handwriting, or we would think, okay, maybe an alternative to truth or half truths. Lies of omission. Success in circuit lies gives the idea of a circuit or something going around or something complicated. And then another one of the lines here that stood out to me was the truth must dazzle gradually. So you don't want to just completely blurt out all of the truth. You want to take it in steps. You want to slowly ease the truth in, because sometimes the truth can be difficult. It can be hard for someone the truth can be hard things for someone to hear. So let's jump into the poem and see why that's relevant. Tell all the truth. The truth is an ocean, vast, explorable, deep, constantly shifting in motion that you can never see its entirety. So here we have an idea of how truth is represented to the poet. So truth is seen as vast and explorable and deep. But what do we know of the ocean really? The ocean is very complicated and complex in our view as humans. We haven't explored the whole ocean. It's deep. There's so much yet to discover. And that's what the poet is trying to get across, that even though we might think that we know so much already, there's so much that we don't know yet about the truth. And none of us are omniscient, so none of us may ever know the full truth of what happens sometimes. Constantly shifting in motion that you can never see its entirety. So the poet here is saying that the truth is constantly shifting, it's constantly changing. And as with life, we change, our thoughts develop, our ideas change. So the truth is constantly changing, that you can never see its entirety. Because is there an entirety of truth? Truth is subjective and perceptive. People tend to say that the truth will come out or do your research, but it is difficult to ascertain what the truth is when it comes to opinions or perceptions. Sometimes my truth may not be the same as your truth, and that's okay. This cartoon here is something that I think a lot about when I think of the truth. I remember the first time I saw it, I thought, oh my god, this is so wild. It's all about perspective. You know, I could be looking at something from one angle and you could be looking at something from the other angle and we could both be right. But I remember seeing a post later on the original 609 on the ground. It was painted and someone was like, no, but if you do your proper research, you could figure out who painted that. It's not just strictly an opinion. It's not, perspective. There would have been reason that someone would have painted that, and if you do your proper research, you could figure it out. But the truth, in reality, is often much more complex than just looking at something on the ground and saying, okay, there is a right answer here, let me figure it out. In real life, well, ideally we would love for there to be one true thing, but in real life it's not like that. Your view of a capricious sea to deem as truth is a fickle snapshot, inconsistent by the eye's potency, fraught with the prejudice of blind spots. So here we're seeing the language used, your view of a capricious sea. So before we had seen, the author is speaking in a very conversational language that you can never see its entirety, your view of a capricious sea. So the way that you are seeing it, to deem as truth, is a fickle snapshot. So to say that your view of the ocean or of a constantly changing, capricious means constantly changing sea, or unpredictable sea, is to call that truth is fickle. It is weak, because it is just a snapshot, as compared to all of the infinite photos that you can take of the sea. Inconsistent by the eye's potency, also inconsistent by how we may see things. You and I might be standing next to each other. I might not be wearing my glasses like I'm not doing right now. And we may see the ocean in a different way. I remember walking the savannah when the rain was falling, and I would take my glasses off and look up at the trees, and I would just see these blurry green outlines with like little bits of the sky poking through, and it looked so beautiful, like an abstract acrylic painting that was just so beautiful. And someone else would just look up and they had touchdown vision, so they might see it perfectly, fraught with the prejudice of blind spots. So blind spots, the idea again of sight. So we have eyes, blind spot, snapshot. blind spots, we may think that we are seeing everything, but there are things that we can't see, and we may not even know that we can't see it. I could be looking at something directly, but there might be another view from a different plane that I just am not aware of. So the language here, blind spots also is in salt water. Again, keeping with the motif of the sea. You know, they when we are bathing in the ocean and we jump into the salt water, we often our eyes burn. So blind spots again. The idea of truth as well in quotation marks is important because the poet really wants to reiterate that truth is not constant. There's not one clear thing that you can just say, this is right, this is it. To show a Polaroid of the scene, a moment stolen from infinite perceptions, sans an annotation of pertinency, are but receipts without actual connection. So to show a Polaroid from a scene, a moment stolen from infinite perceptions. Now the poet has already said that in a way, but the poet was saying your view of the sea to deem as truth as a fickle snapshot. Now, again, she's bringing back this idea of photography. So, to show a Polaroid of the scene now. So, if you have a snapshot of the sea and I have a Polaroid of the same scene, they're both moments stolen from an infinite timeline, an infinite area, an infinite number of planes, of perspectives, of perceptions that we could take of the sea. It's just 1 second. I don't know how photography works. It's just 1 second that we took to press down that button and capture that one picture of that one time of the sea, when there are so many other infinite pictures that we could have taken. Maybe even on the same day, maybe at the same time, from different angles, from different perspectives. As you all know, if we go to the beach, 1 second it would be sunny, the next second it could be raining, just like that. Sans an annotation of pertinency are but receipts without actual connection. So here the poet is saying, without an annotation on the Polaroid of pertinency, of relevance, they are but receipts without actual connection. So if I have a Polaroid here, but there's no scribbling, no details, no journal entries, then there's no actual connection to the events that took place. The relevance of a moment in time compared to the vast infinite possibilities of snapshots is something to consider. Yet, to reveal the relevant journal entry by detailing the events in its entirety, wading the current of doubts and defense, could wave the muddled waters perplexity for clarity. So here, the poet is saying, to reveal the journal entry, to reveal the relevant details. So again, what we're saying here, if we have the Polaroid but without any inscription, if we have pictures without any details, without anything to go along with it, then they're just pictures. They're just one little facet of information that lacks, substance. So if we have this picture here and we want to claim it as truth, we need to say, okay, this is where I was. This was the time, the date, this is who I was with, this was the angle, this was the plane, all the relevant details to say, okay, I was looking at the sea from this perspective. This is what I saw. You may have been looking at the sea at the same time from a different angle. So I could be looking at it this way, you could be looking at it from this perspective. We might have different pictures, completely different pictures. I could be looking at the waves crashing towards me. You could be looking straight down as the waves crash, seeing the arc. So by detailing the events in its entirety, wading the current of doubts and defense. So by telling all the truth, by revealing all of the circumstances, we wade the current of doubts and defense. So as we know, when it comes to truth telling, there's often a lot of ego and pride that is involved, and we need to be open and ready to engage and discuss and speak our truths. So by weighting the current of doubts and defense, by listening to what the other person has to say, by hearing what um, their criticisms, and not necessarily trying to defend ourselves, but listening first, and then sharing what we think. So not pulling out the big guns immediately ready to fight, but just taking a moment and saying, this is what I think. This is my picture of the sea. Not this is my picture of the sea and this is the only picture of the sea that is valid. Could wave the muddled waters perplexity for clarity. So if we stop, we share all of our thoughts, we share our truths. We don't leave anything omitted. We just speak our truth. Then we leave out any reason for muddled waters, for muddy waters, for any dirt to be dredged up. We make space for clear water, for clarity. And again, we have that idea of like crystal clear water coming up again with the motif. So what is the poet asking you to do? The poet is asking you to, when you're truth speaking, tell all the truth. This is where we get the callback to the title of the poem. Tell all the truth. We want to speak everything. We want to tell every facet of information that makes up our truth so that the person could understand. Now, this isn't necessarily what Emily Dickinson might have meant. I know a lot of people find the tell all the truth to mean tell everyone the truth, or tell everyone everything about the truth, or just tell everything about the truth. But this is what I think the poet, me, what was trying to say here. So for instance, here we have these crystal clear sea, we have all of these pictures here that I have taken at different points in time and day of the same day at the beach, Maracas Beach, a few years ago. And the crystal clear seawater with dancing sand after visiting waves. So as the waves crash, we usually have the sand that is floating around in the water. It can seem muddy and dirty to the passing, wandering eye. The sand gives a brown color to the water as the waves crash. It might seem dirty, but true telling involves a lot of messy, chaotic facets to it, and so after a while the wave will pull back in the water and the water may seem crystal clear again. But if we just look at that one snapshot and think, oh, the water is dirty, then we've lost out. So real quick, I just want to go through the rhyme scheme for this poem because it's not exactly the rhyme scheme of Tell All the Truth by Emily Dickinson. So let's just jump into it. Right, so we have ocean motion, then deep sea entirety, then sea snapshot, sea potency, then we have snapshot inconsistent blind spots, scene pertinency, then moment perception annotation connection, pertinency receipts, then we have entry entirety clarity, and the current rhymes with perceptions. So here we have not just the rhyme at the end of the sentence, but we have a lot of internal rhyme as well. And not just internal rhyme, but not exact rhymes, but near rhymes. Because, again, with the truth, sometimes we have almost truths, half truths, but not exactly entire truths. So here we have not exactly entire rhymes, but near rhymes. Why don't you try analyzing the rhyme scheme of this poem yourself or of another poem, and drop it in the comments below. So my final thoughts for this poem is that the poet is trying to tell us that the truth is not something that we can ever really know, because the truth is so vast and so whole that we may never able to truly comprehend it. There's so much that we don't know. You know, a lot of people say there's the two parties truths, and then there's the actual truth, the omniscient truth that none of us know, because none of us know what's going on in other people's lives. Um, when we're watching a movie, it's easy to tell the whole truth because they show us, you know, from a third person's perspective, but we're all living first person perspective, so we just can't know the full truth, and that's okay. We can just be as honest with people as possible and tell them what we know. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this poem. You can check out the link to But Are You Really Sorry, my book, in the description below. Find me on Instagram, where I have more poetry that I leave every week. Next week we'll be doing another poem, so stay tuned for that. I will try to post it up in a few days so that on my story on Instagram, so that you can check it out and analyze it with me. For this month, I'll be doing 5 poems from my book, But Are You Really Sorry? If you haven't gotten a chance to order your copy yet, I will leave the link in the description below. If not, these 5 poems, I will release the poem on Instagram a week before so that you can check it out and do your analysis to discuss with me. Thank you again so much for joining me. I really enjoy this because I think, you know, being a poet but having a mathematical background, I love to analyze things and see the deeper connections between them. And I think that both math and literature are beautiful in their own ways. And I really want to convince you that poetry is just a beautiful form of expression. A lot of people, when they hear poetry, they think of, you know, complicated, like old, really long, difficult to understand poems that they have to sit down and like go through and try to get the meaning out of it. But poetry is so beautiful, and there's so much meaning, you know, not just hidden behind the words, but there's a lot of into poetry these days that are very clear and concise and straight to the point. Like my poem Closure from last week that I will link to the side here. Alright, so thank you so much for joining me again this week, and I will see you next week. Have a great day.